Okay, this is first video of two videos for the Myers family, lesson 5. Okay, page 137, our essential question is how can people communicate through the arts? Okay, so that's what we're going to be thinking about as we read through this. Okay. Now this is an excerpt from a larger text because it says the Myers family from Pass It Down. Okay, so it's part of a larger book. Okay, so let's go to 138 and you could follow along with me. At the top of the page, in the bracket inside the picture, it says Walter Dean Myers, born August 12th, 1937, Martinsburg, West Virginia. Christopher Myers, born October 17th, 1974, Astoria, New York. We lived on the cusp, Walter Dean Myers says of Jersey City, home where he was born. His son, Christopher, grew up during the 1970s. On one side of our house, the neighborhood was all white. On the other side, it was predominantly black. Christopher was a mixed-race kid. Because he could read at 4, he started school early. His classmates were all 2 years older than him. He was not a good athlete, so he was pushed around a bit at school. Classmates looked at me, Christopher Myers recalled, as if I had 3 heads. Walter, the author of Bad Boy, grew up knowing a lot about not getting along well in school. Raised by foster parents in the economically depressed Harlem of the 1940s, he was a restless, inward-looking, over-tall boy with a lisp and serious tendency to take a fist to anyone who made fun of him. His foster parents worked long hours to make ends meet. Although genuinely concerned about his welfare, they were often unaware when their son skipped entire weeks of school. Walter was lucky enough to have a few teachers who, despite his record as a troublemaker, wanted to help him. Some gave him books that made him hungry for more books. Reading, and by middle school, writing became his life's preservers. Okay, and that's a picture of them, I guess these two people that they're talking about at the bottom of the page. Walter Myers and Christopher Myers. I'm on page 139 now. As a teenager, as Walt became more aware that blacks did not have the same chance as whites, his doubts about the future multiplied. It never occurred to him that one day he might write a book. Even as a first-time author, as a man in his 30s, Walter says, I didn't think I was going to have a career. I thought that maybe I would get a book published occasionally. After years of earning his living as an editor, Walter became a full-time writer in 1977. He was 40. Christopher was 3. I'm an early riser, and when Christopher was going to daycare, Walter recalls of that time, I'd finish working late in the morning and pick him up, and we would hang out together in the afternoon, which was very cool. We talked, very often solving the world's problems. I enjoyed his company. We read together, first comics, which had been forbidden to me as a child, and Reader's Digest because we both loved jokes. Later we read poetry. On the weekends, father and son took train into Manhattan and headed for their Golden Triangle, their 3 favorite bookstores, including one called The Forbidden Planet, from which they always returned with armloads of books. Walter, as his foster father had done with him, often told Christopher far-fetched stories that he presented as true. Christopher remembers, I wouldn't eat Brussels sprouts for years because of a story he told me. I had asked him, what are they? They are so odd-looking. He responded with a long, involved story about a war we fought in the 60s with a very small race of aliens. Brussels sprouts were the aliens, leftover heads. I was glad to find this out because now I knew why I was never going to eat Brussels sprouts again. Okay, now we're on page 140, top of page 140. This was not the only way that Walter taught his son not to believe everything he heard or read. Pop, Christopher says, would go through my entire school history texts and write corrections in them. When a book referred to bringing the slaves from Africa, he would cross that out, wanting to be sure that I understood that African people had been enslaved. I was a good student, but I learned early on that education didn't necessarily happen in school. And I learned from Pop that books did not come down from on high, that people wrote them, and that there was work for me to do. That also means not believing everything you read, okay? You always have to question what you read and make an informed decision for yourself. Christopher was drawing 2 hours a day by the time he was 9. Walter takes no credit for this. His mom, who paints, must have noticed his talent because I didn't. Connie would put his drawings up on the refrigerator or the wall. At about 10, he won some contests, but I still wasn't paying much attention. Then he had a picture published in a children's magazine. I saw it, a drawing of an antelope or something, and said, "That's really good." Connie took Christopher to museums and comic book fairs, and once on his birthday on a tour of Marvel Comics. Walter, meanwhile, involved his wife and their son in every aspect of his work. Christopher remembers, my father wrote 10 pages a day. When he was done, he would come down and have me read it out loud so that my mother and he could talk about it. As a teenager, Christopher accompanied his mother to the library to help research Walter's books. Digging up information about African American history strengthened my link to my cultural background, Christopher says. I also realized that there were true stories worth finding and it was possible to unearth them. When Walter discussed a new publishing contract with his wife, he encouraged Christopher to join in the discussion. He wanted me, even at 9 and 10, to see. Christopher says that the contract is part of the process by which books are made. What Christopher most wanted, however, was to draw the pictures for his father's books. He recalls the first time he and his father talked about this. I was 10 and reading fantasy novels when Pop said one day, "Let's do a fantasy together. What would you like to see in it?" "How about a black unicorn?" I said. "That's cool," he said. "What's his problem? We need to give him a problem." Years passed before Walter was able to answer his own question and finish Shadow of the Red Moon. Christopher, then a college student, illustrated the book, finally getting his wish. Okay, we're going to stop there, and then we're going to read the rest of the story tomorrow, okay? On Thursday. We'll finish it, and we'll go over the dig deeper questions, and that should be it for this week, okay? So, if you need to reread, always reread. If you need to rewatch this video, you can watch it as many times as you want. So this is a good book. We didn't talk about preview the topic this week, so I'm going to actually do that as well. I'm doing this a little backwards today. So this is obviously about the arts. A lot of people don't consider writing part of the arts, but it is. It's an art form. So preview the topic on page 135. It talks about performance in visual arts. The arts provide forms for expressing yourself in creative ways. Performance arts include dancing, singing, playing music, and acting. Visual arts include painting, drawing, and sculpting. Creating a book that people want you to look at, read, and enjoy takes planning and hard work. In the Myers family, you will learn about how a family works together to create both literary and visual experience for readers. Okay, so we'll pick this back up tomorrow. Thanks for watching.